Hello, and welcome to the Daily Pouch, the always smouldering but never fully lit campfire of podcast that aims to take a not-so-serious look at the day in Australian news and politics. I am Greg Savage.
And I'm Jake farr-wharton. On tonight's show, we talk Julian Assange's extradition and American-Australian relations.
And the reason for that, the very good reason for that, is that our guest tonight is none other than co-writer and author... I'll say that again. And our guest tonight is none other than co-writer of the Bill and Ted movie franchise and current author of the book The Buddha's Story, Chris Matheson. Stick around as we invite him into the comfort of the pouch and ask him to do the American thing and tell us Australians why we're all wrong. Jake, I presume it was a huge day in Australian news.
We all presume that, yes, absolutely. We're recording in the morning today.
That's right. So I presume this morning, it's just been chock-a-block full of news.
Yeah.
And because of the time differences, we're recording a little earlier this morning. So we're going to go through a couple of news headlines that we're, fingers crossed, are very much still relevant by about 4 or 5 p.m. this afternoon. Hopefully nothing too dramatic's happened, and we're going to look like geese, or else we'll have to ring each other and go again for this little section. Anyway. Yeah. Logan Trio among 6 people in court accused of lying on Queensland border declarations. In separate court hearings on Brisbane and the Gold Coast, 6 people face charges of providing false or misleading information on their Queensland border declaration passes.
Yes, and the Gabba, the Wollongabba cricket and AFL ground are scrambling to complete a $35 million facelift in time for the AFL Grand Final in just a couple of weeks. After being given just 8 weeks' notice. Apparently, it takes 6 months to prepare the grounds normally. Staff are scrambling to prepare the Gabba ahead of the AFL Grand Final next month. Grass-growing rituals and a $35 million makeover are due to be completed in time for the first bounce of the ball. Yes, that's right. I've heard that spending $35 million on grass patterns really helps you kick a ball between some posts.
The grass patterns are very important. It's a very cultural thing in AFL. And also,
sure.
I'm sure that, gosh, if only there were a few people looking for work to be able to help them out. Speaking of unemployment predicted to rise as coronavirus continues to impact economy. Social Services Minister Anne Ruston said Victoria provides very significant challenges for the job market, and next week's federal budget will include the impact of Australians' growing need for job seeker. Lots of people excited by the prospect of being broke after they get paid.
And an adult party with jumping castle, has been busted and broken up as Victorian police issue new warnings on brand spanking new fines to prevent the spread of coronavirus in the state. Melburnians are warned that police will only apply discretion in the most extreme circumstances when enforcing the almost $5,000 fine on unlawful gatherings announced by the government last week. Said the revellers, we were trying to jump high enough on our jumping castle that we'd be able to see what unrestricted life looks like in Queensland and New South Wales. No reports yet on whether they actually saw it.
You don't want to get too much of a glimpse into the Matrix there, do you? It's the very, very big, the fact that people are starting to get their freedoms back here, and that they're still, being very cautious as well. So I think that it's a very much we're all in this together. But speaking of freedoms, and before we complete our shallow wade into some of the more notable news headlines from the day, let's introduce tonight's guest. Chris Matheson is a film director and screenwriter, and well known for his writing credits on the Bill and Ted franchise. You don't mind if we call it a franchise, Chris?
I don't.
No, okay,
I'm
great.
Flattered.
I just didn't want to lump it in with like Hungry Jack's or McDonald's or something, like I didn't.
It's fair.
Fair. Blockbuster Video or something. He was also a writer and EP on one of Jake's favorite movies, Rapture Palooza. He's also the author of several irreverently hilarious and thought-provoking books, one of which is the brand new book, The Buddha's Story. Chris, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure. How are you? How tell us a little bit about how life is for you in the US at the moment.
It's stressful.
Yeah.
The election is stressful,
Yes.
We're all kind of biting our nails, and not all of it. Well, I guess everybody is for different reasons, but it's it's a very, very intense time in the United States, and people are really, really mad at each other, and really worried about, it's a strange time to be an American, actually.
And how are you going? Are you keeping safe in terms of the coronavirus proliferation and spread?
I mean, so far. And then there were gigantic fires, which you guys know. You guys know about those very well, and how stressful that is, and having to move around and smoke, and it can have a kind of a semi-apocalyptic feel at times.
Yes, not to mention the apocalyptic look. It's
totally.
It's crazy. The orange skies, and it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But other than that, I'm doing very well.
So you've obviously been very busy during this time. I don't know whether you sort of self-locked down or what the situation is there, but you've not only managed to crank out a new Bill and Ted script for them to be working on and finished, and I think that's been released now as well. You've also written a new book. Talk us through what's happening with the book and what it's about.
I wrote a couple of books in the last 5 years about the Bible, basically taking the Bible at face value. If this book is actually true, if this is for real, who's this guy? Who is this God character if it's true? So I kind of finished that project where I tracked him through the Bible, and I actually followed him into the Quran and the Book of Mormon, and because it's the same character who pops up all the time. And then I was done with him, and I thought, well, now what? So I thought I'd look at Eastern religion, which I didn't know a lot about. And I started with Buddhism because, to the degree that I'd interacted with Western Buddhists, I hadn't been very favorably impressed. They had kind of a smug, insufferably smug quality to them, I felt. So I started reading the stories of the Buddha, and you can't just read the Bible. It's not like the Bible where there's one book. You have to read dozens, hundreds, really. And I didn't get too far in, and I basically just sit with kind of a red pen marking these books up, like, is this funny? Is this funny? And it didn't take very long before I had enough red marks that I thought, I can write this. So the Buddha's story is his story told first person,
right?
Of his entire life from birth to death, with a lot of past lives mixed in, and the birth of his supposedly beautiful philosophy, which I don't find beautiful at all.
Do you think the relative smugness that you mentioned is because they're flexible individuals, all of that yoga and all of that clean living?
Yeah, I think that must be it.
Yeah,
I think there's something deeply fraudulent about this belief system, even more than Judaism and Christianity. I think that the whole kind of, quote, compassion, loving kindness thing, I think it's very fake, because actually what's built into it is don't love anybody. I mean, that's actually what the Buddha says. Don't love anybody. Love is a shackle. Love will hold you back. Don't love your wife. Don't love your children, but love everybody. Have this kind of general loving kindness for everybody, which I think is absurd. I don't think humans are made that way.
Yeah, it probably boils down to a little bit of, what they refer to as cherry picking, isn't it? Like, people will sort of go, hey, I love Buddhism because it preaches kindness and caringness. And then you go, well, have you...
And so much love.
How deep have you actually dug into it? Because, like you say, you sort of might discover that maybe that's not what it says, and that actually you're the one projecting your own kindness onto the actual book and beliefs.
No, I mean, what I felt is it didn't take very long for me to think, well, this is all about, just like the other ones, this is all about ego.
Yeah.
This whole thing's about ego, and ostensibly it's about lack of ego, but it's not about lack of ego. It's completely about ego, and it's about this guy's ego at the center, and he reveals himself to be about the most arrogant character I think I've ever encountered anywhere. His arrogance is just a tiny little example. He calls himself Tathagata, which means, and he has his followers call him Tathagata, and Tathagata means perfect one, and he makes it very clear to them that he doesn't want to be called perfect one for any ego, because he has no ego. He's very clear with them. I have no ego. I want you to call me perfect one because I am perfect. So that's the Buddha.
That's it.
He deserves to be mocked, and these guys have gotten kind of a pass.
Look, irony didn't exist back then, so that makes sense.
All right. Speaking of ego, let's
moving on to Julian Assange.
Yeah, let's tackle a little bit. So what we have to do for this particular show, viewers and listeners, is we had to try and figure out obviously a few stories which have a US Australian crossover. So where better to start than Julian Assange?
Exactly.
Excuse me. Where better to start than Julian Assange? Now, Jake, Julian Assange is ongoing extradition hearing to the US to face espionage charges. He will be a test for Australian and USA relations. Tell us a little bit about what's happening here.
Yes, well, the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is set to fight for his freedom in a British court after a decade of legal drama as he continues to challenge American authorities' attempts to extradite him on spying charges over the WikiLeaks, the site's publication of secret US military documents all that time ago. The American prosecutors have indicated that the 49-year-old Australian is up on 18 espionage and computer misuse charges, adding to a maximum sentence of 175 years. I mean, he looks pretty old now, and he's only 49 years. It looks like at 175 years, that guy is going to look like Skeletor. Yeah. But yes, his lawyers say that the prosecution is a politically motivated thing, a politically motivated abuse of power that will stifle press freedom and put journalists at risk. Now, the attorney for Assange, Jennifer Robinson, said that the case is, quote, fundamentally about basic human rights and freedom of speech. Quote, journalists and whistleblowers who reveal illegal activity by companies or governments and war crimes, such as the publications that Julian has been charged for, should be protected from prosecution.
Yeah, and obviously the American prosecutors say that Assange is a criminal and not a free speech hero. Now, I think that's an interesting point. I think that's probably the crux of the issue. That's where, thank goodness for laws and things like that, because obviously if everyone had their armchair opinion way, that he'd be a free man. So I think that it's interesting, that division between what is the freedom of speech, and he knew that what he was doing was sort of, I suppose, a wrong thing to be doing. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't go about it the way that he did it, and that hasn't come without consequences, and obviously, a message being sent as well. I think those nuances are the things that are kind of missing a little bit there. I don't think it's as easy as just saying this is free speech or not free speech.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Well, I wonder, Chris, whether you can give us your opinion on this. How do you, as an American, or how do Americans feel in general about WikiLeaks did in I suppose, exposing what was going on in Afghanistan all that time ago?
Well, I'm going to say first off, I don't have a very informed opinion about this. So anything I say is going to be, I'm an American, and that's about it. You're getting the opinion of a relatively uninformed American. I will say it does seem mixed, as you say. I mean, the free speech part of it is sort of exciting and attractive, and on the other hand, from the standpoint of American politics, this guy played a significant role in getting Donald Trump elected. And so it's hard for me to be super sympathetic with this guy, because the leaks in 2016 all seemed to benefit Donald Trump. And surely there were things that he had about Trump, but none of them were leaked, because Trump's got just a boatload of troubles. So, on that level, it's hard for me to be 100% sympathetic with the guy, because I feel like he's one of those characters who tipped the scales a little bit. in 2016.
And coming back to your point about the Buddha as well, I think that, like, from Australia's point of view, I think once you dig a bit deeper into Julian Assange and what, sort of some of his behaviours, you can sort of go, you can pin him up as a bit of a hero for freedom of speech and all that sort of thing, and sort of, project your own beliefs onto it and sort of, get on your own grandstand about it. But then once you dig a bit deeper, and like you say, helping Trump get elected, breaching those important security measures that the world has in place for making sure that information doesn't get out there. All sorts of manner of things that it's a bit more nuanced, I think, than just saying, look, it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. And I wonder whether you can talk to how you as an American, or how Americans feel. Again, I preface it that way. You don't necessarily speak for all Americans, but as an American, you do anyway.
I do, yeah.
But I wonder whether you could talk to how you feel about the revelations, or at least claims that the Trump campaign would pardon Assange if he claimed that the email leaks actually originated from WikiLeaks and from within America instead of from Russia.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's their game. I think we all more or less anticipate that there's the possibility that Trump will pardon himself on the way out. That's. Yeah, I would expect that would happen in the same way that he more or less, I don't know if he pardoned Roger Stone, but that's not really surprising. I mean, I guess what I don't know about Assange at all, and maybe you guys do, is what his agenda is. What is this guy? What is it that motivates this guy?
Yeah.
What is it that he wants? Is he just a pure warrior for free speech? Because at least in 2016, in the American election, there did seem to be kind of an agenda at work. But I don't know what it is. I don't know enough about.
It's an interesting question, and it's one, invariably. It's not an easy question to answer because it changes with the years. Certainly, his the people who staunchly support him feel that he is a free speech warrior, a journalist and a whistleblower. But that I'm not certain that is entirely borne out by the evidence. It was, I feel, most people would suggest that on balance it was probably a very important thing that occurred when he originally released, or when WikiLeaks originally released all of the documents and particularly the videos that were released. But invariably, does that constitute journalism? Not necessarily. It's the release of documents, and journalists then write articles based upon that. So what invariably it was a whistleblowing action. So, and whistleblowing is not free speech. Whistleblowing is is and should be, certainly from a human rights perspective, should be a protected act, where you act on behalf of the broader society.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of those, the relationship between Australia and the US, we've got a story here about Australians' perceptions of the United States, and the fact that they've probably, not surprisingly, plummeted over the last year, with 3 in 4 Australians saying they have no confidence. Sorry. It'll teach me to get a hot tea before I drink. I usually just have a glass of water. Australians' perceptions of the United States have plummeted over the past year, with 3 in 4 Australians saying they have no confidence President Donald Trump will do the right thing for the world. What is the right thing for the world, Jake?
Oh, look, do whatever Australia wants to do. Look, we're 100% altruistic. There's no ego in that. Look, these findings are really interesting. It's out of the Pew Research Centre, and it compares Australian attitudes towards the US and 13 other countries, across Europe, across North America, and of course across the Asia Pacific. So all of the major, I suppose, regions. And interestingly enough, a major reason for the plunge in support for the US and its president appears appears to be the country's failure to contain the coronavirus, which is obviously a massive thing. Whereas other countries throughout both Asia, throughout parts of Europe, and indeed across the Tasman and the Pacific, Australia and New Zealand have been able to broadly act both federally and at a state level in order to contain the virus and prevent the loss of life and ongoing sickness. And this is quite an interesting thing. So the survey, which was conducted in June and July this year, found that 33% of Australians have a favourable view of the US, which is down from 50% just a year ago. So it is probably pretty easy to contain that to the coronavirus response. But this is the lowest favourability rating since the Pew first polled Australians back in 2003, which obviously was during the Bush era. But yes, Australian support for the US peaked in 2013, the start of Barack Obama's second term, with 66% of respondents saying that they had a favourable perception of our most important military and indeed one of our most important trade allies. And I think what this really reflects is we did have this situation reasonably early on in the coronavirus pandemic, where Donald Trump specifically and a number of the more high-profile Republican officials were talking about the need for a proper, well-thought-out inquiry that considered all options, but absolutely pointed the blame back at China. After that was said, a few Australian politicians started saying the exact same thing. We need an inquiry. We need to know how this thing spread. Unfortunately, pretty soon after that, America stopped talking about an inquiry, and Australia kept forging forward, and it did. It rather comprehensively damaged our relationship with our largest trading partner in China. So it did sort of, from sort of the side observer's perspective, it perhaps damaged Australia's perception of, do we have this comprehensive allyship with the US? Are they going to back us up anytime we have these types of, we backed America up? Are they going to back us up in the future, particularly when there is the loss of trade and economy as a result? So, Chris, I wonder whether I can ask you, does Australia's opinion of the USA, given these findings, but does Australia's opinion of the USA matter to Americans?
I would think that it would. I mean, I would think that if, the Pew survey of American attitudes of other countries, I would think Australia would be pretty high. I mean, I mean, I was thinking about it. It's almost like in some strange way, Canada and Australia and the US are sort of sibling-ish.
Yeah, 100%.
And of course, what siblings think matters. I think Americans by and large have quite a favorable view of Australia. I also think Australia is not alone in this plummeting favorable opinion of the US. I would think if you looked at the same charts in Germany, France, England, Canada, Japan, I bet it would be pretty similar around the world, and that's kind of just generally speaking not a good thing.
Yeah,
but it's not a good thing that our allies do not think very highly of us at this point.
One thing that seems to happen with Trump is that everything that sort of seems bad on the surface actually ends up playing into his hands and into his base's hands, and essentially I can see how supporters of Trump would project onto the findings that, well, that's good because, no one has ever stood up to China. No one has ever stood up to, your trading partners. No one has, this is what happens. You're going to ruffle a few feathers in order to get ahead. So it's not as if I mean, obviously the polls from our perspective are a reflection on Trump himself. When we go around asking people if they have a favorable view of the US, I mean, you can't take that personally. It's basically asking, do you like Donald Trump? That's how it would be interpreted. So, people in the US, similar sort of thing, I imagine. Do you care what, being asked, do you care what someone else thinks of you overseas? Well, no, we don't, because they're wrong. We're actually finally standing up to the bullies of the world, and we're finally standing up for America. And he's got an American first policy. I imagine that's how it would be twisted.
There's a lot of that. I would say that's roughly 40% of the country that feels that, and I think 60% does not feel that. But that 40% is a very hard 40%, and that 40% votes, man. They are absolutely rock solid, and they cannot be deterred. The 60% tends to be, a little bit softer, but there are more of us than there are of them.
Yeah,
ultimately. But they have to vote too, right?
Yeah, or I mean, it's like, really, if everybody came out to vote, this would be a landslide. This would be an absolute landslide. That's not a majority opinion in the U.S. You're right. That is an opinion that you certainly hear expressed, but it's pretty crude. That's a pretty crude way of looking at things. It's a more complex world than that, I think. Most people get.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you want to keep going with this one, Jake, or do you want to? Do you want to move on to who said what?
Look,
where?
I suppose the final question, Chris, really is, if this decline in Australia's opinion of America continues, who is going to take over the bartending jobs that Australians fill? Is there another nation that you would peg for that extraordinarily important job in America?
No, I think this is kind of a disaster looming, Jake. I think this is what must be averted ultimately.
Yeah. Look, we in Australia completely agree. Those of us who had a gap year, absolutely, we completely agree.
Yeah.
Were you a bartender, Jake? Where were you a bartender?
No, I never learnt to sling drinks, except for my own. And nobody really liked my drinks, so I think I made them too strong. That was my issue.
You just got to start pouring the pre-mixed drinks into a cup and saying, "Here you go, I made this one. It's good."
Yeah, here it is.
Yes, let's move on to the game show time. It's time to play Who Said It?
Yep.
An American politician or an Australian politician. I'll give you each one question at a time, and we'll see how we go. I've got a couple of questions at the end as tiebreakers, just in case you all get everything correct or indeed wrong.
Well, we've got 50-50, don't we?
We do absolutely. So, Chris, first question. Quote, "The beauty of me is that I'm very rich." Who said it? Was it an American or an Australian?
Well, it's so obvious. This has got to be a trick question, because I'm going to assume that I'm going to say it's Trump, so therefore I'm going to say it's an Australian.
No, you were correct first in saying that it was Trump. So
shit.
It was a trick question.
Damn it!
I did that exactly. The dead give.
Clever.
The dead giveaway, of course, is that Australian politicians, by and large, we've had maybe one in the last 10 years, but Australian politicians, by and large, are definitely not overtly wealthy. Greg, Greg, you got the next question.
Great.
Quote, "Separation of church and state was set up to protect the church from the state, not the other way around, to protect religious freedoms." Who said it?
That's an Australian one.
It is indeed. It was Scott Morrison.
Yes. Yep.
Our current Prime Minister.
Yep. I thought it was a very recent quote. I was going to say Tony Abbott, but then I thought, no, that doesn't sound like something Tony Abbott would say, because it's coherent.
No, it was
but
way too structured.
Yes. Yeah, but I do remember hearing that quote. Yeah, okay.
So Chris, next question. Quote, "Rarely is the question asked, is our children learning?"
Well, that's W. So I know that one. American.
Yes, indeed. It was George W. Bush. Yep. Greg?
Yep.
Quote, "It's freezing and snowing. We really need some global warming."
Oh, jeez. I don't know. That could be anyone, couldn't it? I mean, it could have been anyone even saying it sarcastically. I would say I'm going to go American.
It was indeed, yes. It was Donald J. Trump. Speaking before he was president, I think, but he's probably said it a few times since as well.
I wouldn't have been surprised if it was like an Australian politician on a hot mic or something like that, just sort of having a bit of a joke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Next up, Chris. Abortion is the easy way out. It's hardly surprising that people should choose the most convenient exit from an awkward situation. Australian or American?
Wow. I'm going to say Australian.
It was indeed. It was former Prime Minister Tony Abbott.
Wow. Okay.
Nice work. Greg?
Subtle. He's so subtle, isn't he? He's such
subtle.
a delicate individual.
He is indeed. Greg? Quote, facts are stupid things.
I don't know. It sounds like something I would say when I'm trying to think of something first thing in the morning. So I'm gonna say Australian.
No, it was Ronald Reagan, in fact.
Really?
Yes.
Facts are stupid things. You know why? You know why facts are stupid things? Because you just go, oh, yep, I've got this thing sorted out, and then some fact will jump in the way and go, no, you don't. Yeah, well, you're a stupid thing. Get out of my way, fact.
Exactly. Never let the evidence get in the way of a good thing. All right, Chris. Quote.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna love this one. This is a great one. Quote. My fingers are long and beautiful, as it has been well documented, are various other parts of my body.
Well, it is important to note that this is at a Republican debate. This is Donald Trump alluding to his own penis, obviously. Yeah. American.
Classic.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Greg.
Yep.
Quote, up close, wind turbines are ugly, they're noisy, and they may have all sorts of other impacts.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that was Tony Abbott.
It's indeed Tony
Yeah,
Abbott,
so Australian.
former
Yep.
Australian Prime Minister. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, one of the reasons we don't have wind farms here, Chris, is because they're ugly. They don't look good, We're all about looking good here.
Good.
If it doesn't look good on a beach, we don't want
it. So, Chris, next up. Every month that we do not have an economic recovery package, 500 million people lose their jobs.
Okay, that's Biden. Kind of doing one of his gaffes.
Wow. Well, actually, you are correct that it's America, but it's not. It's not Biden. It's a Nancy Pelosi quote.
It was Pelosi?
Yeah.
Wow. She said 500 million. She said 500 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For the record, yeah, if that's a lot.
Yeah.
That would be a lot. Yeah.
Million,
that would be a lot.
Actual population of a group. But yes. So, Greg?
Yep.
More and more of our imports are coming from overseas.
True.
Just true. Doesn't matter who said it. It's just true.
Who said it, Greg? Who said it? Was it an American politician or was it an Australian?
No, I'm so worried. Like I sometimes think, gosh, could you have a career in politics? And listening to these quotes, I just think that would just be my life. Is just people just saying stupid things that I've said. I don't know. American.
Yeah, it was a W.
Okay. Which
George
one?
W. Bush.
Which W? All right.
Not HW, but
not
just
HW, just GW, right?
Exactly. So, Chris,
Yes.
final one for you. Quote, what the housewives of our country need to understand as they do the ironing is that if they get it done commercially, it's going to go up in price. And their power bills, when they switch the iron on, are going to go up. Chris, which country was it? Was it Australia or America?
I'm going to say Australia.
It was indeed, yes.
Yeah.
A lot of quotes in here from Tony Abbott, which I didn't necessarily bias him. Trying to pull bias away from Donald Trump, so I have over-biased Abbott. Okay, final question, Greg. Final question, and this is actually, I should say, this is for the win. Otherwise, it is indeed a
Okay.
tie. Quote.
Yes.
I swear to God, I don't have a crush on Donald Trump.
I don't know. That's a good one. American.
Yeah, incorrect. No, it was Senator Pauline Hanson.
Was it?
It was indeed.
That's so funny. Pauline Hanson, Chris, is our sort of, I don't know how to describe her. She's sort of a bit, there's elements of Trump in the sense that there's an underswell of people who really sort of gravitate towards her, but she does say some controversial things, and she says enough controversial things that occasionally something happens that's quite, interesting, or, you go, okay, I kind of agree with that, but all the other stuff is kind of a bit fluffy. So she's our little controversial.
Louis Gohmert.
Yeah.
She's Australia's what?
Louis Gohmert.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who does not have a crush on Donald Trump?
Yes, who does not.
Does not.
Distinctly does not have a crush on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It's quite
right.
Yeah. Which, being a politician, clearly means she does. So.
Oh, she does.
Yeah.
She does. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations. I'm going to give it to you, Chris, because your answers were way better than Greg's.
Yep. Very good. Very good. All right. Well, Chris, where can people find your book? I presume these days you just type it into Google and up it comes. Is that right? Is it an ebook?
I would think. Yeah. I would think that Amazon's probably the quickest, easiest way. Just Kindle it on Amazon. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Kindle and Amazon, Apple Books, and possibly I think you can. I've seen it on here. You can get it shipped from the UK pretty cheap as well. The book is the Buddha's story, and it's written from the first person perspective of Buddha growing up. Is that right?
It's his whole life, from birth to death.
Yeah. Do you give him some? Is there some? I don't want you to give too much away, obviously, but do you sort of try and give him a reason to be arrogant? You've sort of said that he ends up being quite an arrogant individual. Do you sort of paint the picture of how he ended up that way?
Well, he's kind of arrogant from the very start. His creation, his birth, he basically emerges from his mother's side. He doesn't come out of her birth canal because, that would be so very corrupting to his perfect soul. So he emerges and the gods who work for him, basically. Anybody who thinks that Buddhism is not really theistic is crazy. He makes himself a god, essentially. The gods work for him. The Hindu gods work for him. They run around. He's just been born. He runs around. He plants himself. He holds his arm up and he says, "I'm the king of the world." That's what he does when he's first born, and it never changes. So,
right.
He's perfect.
Oh, look, I couldn't agree more. Totally was.
All right. On that note, Jake, when people have finished Googling where to find the Buddha story by Chris Matheson, or settling down on a couch to watch the new Bill and Ted movie. What is the name of the new Bill and Ted movie? I did have it here. It's
Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Face the Music. That's right. It was a little bit different than the other ones.
And Chris, does it stand up against the others?
I think it does. It's a different kind of animal because it's 29. The first one and the second one were kind of back to back, and this is almost 3 decades later, and it has a lot to do with the passage of time and those 3 decades. And so it's I think it does. I think it's still Bill and Ted. It's just Bill and Ted at 50, basically dealing with the fact that it didn't happen, that their great song that was supposed to save the world, they just never really came up with it. Yeah. So then they try and steal it from their future selves, and hopefully comedy ensues.
It sounds like the way that this podcast will end up. We'll keep searching for that perfect podcast, and then one day we'll just flog it from someone else. All right. So thank you for that, Chris. So once our listeners have finished googling the Buddha story, finished googling Bill and Ted Face the Music, what would you like them to do?
I would love it if they subscribed and rated and review. If you rate and review, it definitely helps other people to find us.
It does. And if you'd like to share the love, you can do so by telling your friends, families, and foes to head over to thepouchthepodcast.com, where they can choose their favorite podcast player of choice. Jake, thank you for joining me. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for
Chris.
having me. It was fun.
Yeah, that
Thanks,
was
guys.
fun. Yeah, that was fun. It was surprisingly fun. No.
It was a light-hearted jaunt.
Would love to have you on again, Chris. Thank you for that, and enjoy. What time is it there? What are you doing?
It is 2:45, and I will probably try and do some writing now. It's about time for that.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. I'm going to do some editing.
All right.
All right. See you, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks very much,
gentlemen.
Chris. It was really lovely. I'll get in contact with you soon.